And at every moment, the second gentleman of the United States of America, Douglas Emhoff, has been front and center, shining his spotlight on the dark corners where anti-Semitism flourishes. I was honored to join with him in multiple conversations at the White House as he led the creation of the first ever in our history creation of the National Strategy to Combat Anti-Semitism. And when the strategy was released in May, we could not have envisioned how much more dire the situation would have become. And we are fortunate that at this moment of deep challenge, the second gentleman's voice is part of this administration's whole of government and whole of society effort to eradicate this most ancient form of hate. Friends, please welcome the second gentleman of the United States of America, Douglas Emhoff. While the second gentleman is getting his mic fixed, we're also going to welcome to the stage one of the most visionary leaders and effective champions of social justice, our North American URJ board chair, Jennifer Brodke-Kaufman.
And Rabbi, thank you so much. He has been in the room and been in the room and been in the room. I don't know about a sabbatical, because every major moment, every meeting that we've had at the White House, not even at the White House, I've seen him all over the country.
Thank you.
Whenever somebody needs to be there to fight and to talk about justice and talk about what we believe in, he's there. So thank you.
So I want to thank you for being with us today. This is just such an honor. And I'm wondering if we can just start. I would be very curious to hear a little bit about your connection to the Jewish community growing up and as an adult in an interfaith family. I know that you and the Vice President have spoken of the ways in which you celebrate across your different faith traditions and how much that resonates with us as Reformed Jews who value our interfaith partners. So does your family experience have a way of helping you find a common ground when you are put into a situation where you want to be building bridges between Jewish and non-Jewish parts of our communities?
Okay, well, let me break all that down.
You can do the down. You can break it down.
There. So, hello, everyone. Douglas Emhoff. I'm just a Jewish kid, a Reformed Jewish kid from Matawan, New Jersey. I started going to Temple Shalom, Rabbi Henry M. Weiner. What a man. Back in 1969, when our family moved from Brooklyn to Central Jersey, so it's a very familiar story, right? And that's the story. And my dad worked in the city. We found this great community. We found this temple that was pretty much brand new. And I was saying the other night how I wish the kids today could grow up the way I did, with a temple like that, with the guitar playing and the music and the celebration and the joy, as was mentioned. But it was also what this reform movement is about. It's about the justice, repairing the world, about sticking up for others, progressive values, equality, sticking up against bullies, but going to Hebrew school. So it was balancing sports and Hebrew school, and it was no big deal. There weren't a lot of Jews in our neighborhood, but there were some. But everything was fine. Jewish summer camp every summer. Yes, I will say I was Athlete of the Year at Jewish summer camp. I still brag about it to this day. I went back and visited. They named an athletic field after me. But that's what it was. And when you talk to the rabbi, he didn't treat us as kids. He told us what was going on in Israel. Like we watched the news back in 1973, we knew what was going on. So during that whole period, it was imbued in us, this what the faith is, but also what Israel is and what's happening there and how important Israel is to being an American Jew, period. Not talking about politics there. We're talking about what Israel means to us as Jewish people. So that was just put into my brain very early on. And I think it's why I became a lawyer. These values, talking to the rabbi, and this concept of tzedek, justice. That's what I was all about. And again, I hated bullies, still do. And I was a little bigger kid, so I was always the one standing in between someone trying to pick on somebody else. And I felt as a lawyer, what a way to have a profession where I can still do that. And then I met Kamala Harris, who a lot I can talk about that other part of the question, but I think one of the things that really bound us together when we were courting was the same thing. Her values are the same as my values, which again, fighting for justice, fighting for equality, fighting against bullies, and just standing up for other people. And in terms of our faith, that's that's what we believe in. And so those things are so in our blood and our DNA that we approach the world in such a similar way. And in terms of religion, she's the biggest supporter of me speaking up and speaking out against anti-Semitism, for our values, living openly and proudly as a Jew each and every day. So that's why, again, it sounds like a laundry list, but it's important. There was never a mezuzah at the White House or the vice presidential residence. Now there are two. I think it's mezuzot, Rabbi, is that right? Two mezuzah. I looked that one up. We had live seders, we've had menorah lighting, so which again, just living openly proud. And this is my wife pushing me and being okay doing that, and just the same way I support her. So her brother-in-law Tony is here, and her niece Mina's husband Nick is here supporting me, because the family supports each other. So hi guys. And the last time we went to church together for Easter with Nick and his kids. So this is how a family should be. But at heart, it's those values. The values, again, of when you were going through the initial comments I was listening to, again, about fighting for other people, sticking up for people, fighting for justice, fighting against inequality, all those things that bind us together, bind myself and Kamala Harris together, and so many other non-Jews who feel this way. That's what it's all about. So I hope that answered that question.
That did. Thank you. Thank you. So as Jonah mentioned, last summer the White House announced the historic strategy to counter anti-Semitism, and its focus is on everything, the entire federal government, private sector, leadership around in our communities. And I want to thank you and the president and the vice president for making this such a priority for the administration. None of us knew before October 7th, or how October 7th was going to supercharge the anti-Semitism that we are all experiencing. And I'm wondering that when you thought about the role that you might play in the Biden-Harris administration, was fighting anti-Semitism at the time in the mix? How did that become a cause for you?
Well, look, I'm the first Jewish person ever to be a White House principal, which means president, vice president, or married to them. So, and I think coming into office when they did in early 2021, remember, we'd already had Charlottesville, which, remember, Jews will not replace us with the tiki torches. And President Biden talks about this all the time, publicly, certainly privately, as one of the drivers to run for office again in 2020. And sadly, that was followed by Tree of Life, a place that I've now visited several times. Just unbelievable, unspeakable violence against Jews here. And so we had 1/6, we've had all these things that were happening when we took office. So I knew coming in that this was as a Jewish person in this role with this microphone, I was definitely going to use it to speak out, not only against anti-Semitism, but of hate. So the initial platform was really there's an epidemic of hate in our world that is not just anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Asian, anti-truth, anti-science, you name it. It was happening and is happening, exacerbated by online and disinformation, misinformation, gaslighting, all these things. So I knew I had to do something. So I wrote about it, spoke about it, and I did it with Jewish groups, Jewish college students. I was already meeting with college students all around the country. Anytime I traveled around the world, I was talking about this epidemic of hate. And I think near the end of last year, when between the Kanye West, Trump, Fuentes, all that stuff, and then I think we were back in Los Angeles, and I think the tipping point was on the 405 freeway, there was a banner, my freeway, my town, that said Kanye was right. I came back to DC and I said, we need to do something more. And Rabbi Pesner was at the more was, I'm going to convene a meeting of Jewish leaders with representatives of the administration, and we're going to start to formalize this. We need a plan, we need a strategy, we need to do something about this epidemic of hate in general. We had the meeting, and it was a group from this side of the spectrum to this side of the spectrum, religiously, politically, and I know there's been talk and this. I said, hey, whoa, whoa. What we all have in common is we are all hated equally, and we are going to address this issue of anti-Semitism, period. And you know what? That group came together. Shortly thereafter that meeting, President Biden stood up an interagency task force, all of government, with the mandate of fighting anti-Semitism, also Islamophobia. Just to be clear, the Islamophobia piece was already in the mandate from December of 2022, and other forms of hate. Job one, because there was so much of it, was to fight anti-Semitism. So we worked so hard with outside groups, many of you, heroic work within all parts of the government. So by May, we had a plan. If you haven't seen the plan, you should check it out. It's pretty remarkable in its scope and how it got us ready for this horrific moment of post 10/7. I want to also give kudos to Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt, who I don't think she's here, but we would not have this without her. Liz Short Randall, some of you may know, Homeland Security Advisor to the President, Susan Rice, and now Neera Tanden. I mean, we really came together. And so luckily, thank God, we have Joe Biden as president and Kamala Harris as vice president. Because when 10/7 hit, I just felt like so many of you, like something just lost. I just to be able to then, a few days later, with the President of the United States, convene most of that same group and others in the same room that we were in just less than a year before, to now talk about what had just happened. And I remember I was in the hold room, and the president came in, and he just looked me in the eye, held me by the hand, and said, hey, kid, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not okay. None of us are okay. He said, all right, let's go out there and tell the world how you feel. And I'm right behind you. And that was hard. If you saw how you could see my raw emotion that day, I still feel it. I think we all still feel that. But to have him literally have my back, by extension, to have all our backs, and to hear what he said that day and how he's been throughout, how my wife has been throughout, has just been remarkable. And so the work has continued since 10/7. I've just been doing this almost full time, traveling the country, traveling the world, internal meetings, external meetings, countless phone calls to folks just to check in, see how they're doing. Literally every day, something pops in the news that you've kind of got to deal with it. But the administration has taken action. There have been, as was mentioned, a marked increase, ADL report. I think it's even worse. FBI numbers are staggering. The DHS numbers, the Department of Education numbers. So we are doing everything we can with the resources that we have to investigate the hate crimes, the reporting. We've made the reporting easier on the DHS website, on the Secretary of Education website, or Department of Education website, the FBI intake. We're making the intake easier, but it's a crisis. It is a crisis of anti-Semitism. So as much as we're doing, we need to do more, and we're going to continue to do more. But as my wife, the vice president, it's kind of still surreal to say that. My wife, the vice president, Kamala, she just said, you know, this is all for a reason. That this entertainment lawyer from LA is in this spot at this time. And she just keeps pushing me, no matter how hard it is to get up in front of all of you and speak and speak in front of the national minority. It's tough to do this right now, the way I'm feeling, the way we're all feeling. But she said, you have to keep doing this. This is what you need to do. And so I really am grateful for her, not only for all the work she's done, but personally to keep me going, to keep doing this work. So, honey, thank you.
I want to just follow up for a moment and just tell you how incredibly grateful and appreciative we are for the administration's commitment to Israel's safety and security, especially since October 7th, and also for your commitment to the humanitarian needs of Palestinians who are also suffering. Thank you. We know what a challenging time this is, and one of the places where this has been the most challenging has been on college campuses. And I'm wondering what you're hearing from students when you go to college campuses and how the administration, including the Department of Education, is helping to address those challenges.
So this issue on college campuses didn't just start on October 7th. And those of you who are parents of college students, I used to be parents of college students. I'm now a part-time professor at Georgetown Law School. Thank you. So this has been going on, and even prior to October 7th, I tried to meet with college students, Hillel groups all over the country. I think I was the first convener of Hillel groups of local campuses at the vice president's residence. So we had already been onto this issue, as many of you. But then the issue was, it was, fear, but it was mostly a feeling of being isolated. And all these things were happening on campus to, isolate Jewish students. We don't want you. We don't want you helping our group. We're not going to help you. You don't need us, and we don't need you. So it was a very a lot was happening. Then, of course, after October 7th, the aloneness turned to fear. Fear of going to class, fear of being subjected to violence, fear of not even feeling safe once you made it to the classroom itself, fear from being picked on by the professors, fear of not being supported by campus administration, and actual threats of violence, like at Cornell. I went to Cornell. Right after that happened, I met with those students in the very same kosher dining hall that was threatened. And these are kids, they were looking me in the eye and being strong, but they were terrified. And that is not okay. You cannot have a situation where American Jewish students are somehow being blamed for things they have no control over, period. So this conflation of all these issues, the inability to hold more than one thing in your head at the same time, is having serious impact on these students and these young people, and it's traumatizing. So we have met many meetings internally. We met with Secretary Cardona, with Jewish leaders. Some of you were there. You've seen the action coming out of the Department of Education. You're seeing, we're trying to do as much as we can given the resources that we have. But we're going to continue to focus on this issue. Of course, everyone saw the video with the college presidents, and I spoke up on that, as many have. But we need action. We need to have action to make sure kids are safe, that they can go to class, you can feel that you're able to achieve the goals and the reasons that you went to school, and this has got to change, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction.
So, as you've noted, you're the first Jewish spouse of a president or a vice president, and you have today and previously been incredibly and wonderfully outspoken about supporting your wife. And at the same time, you've said that she has encouraged you to do this work focused on fighting hate, and even saying that this moment found you. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the work you're doing to build coalitions to combat hate, including anti-Muslim hate.
Yes, so as I mentioned, the Islamophobia piece was part of the initial announcement to fight anti-Semitism, so that's clear. That didn't just fall out of the sky after October 7th. That had always been in the works. But as I mentioned earlier, when they came into office, I made focusing on hate, which include all hate, including Islamophobia and other forms of hate, as part of my portfolio, and which meant traveling around the country, traveling around the world, just doing events. So I would do interfaith events, multicultural events, and we tried to find things where there were commonalities. Where do we have things in common? So whether it's food, whether it's sports, whether it's anything that could bring people together, where you're finding that common ground, not what separates you. And this is something that you see, it just works. So whether I'm in my trip to Poland and Germany earlier this year, which was just one of the things drives me when I went to Auschwitz. But we also had meetings in Berlin, and one of the meetings was with a group of young Muslim leaders, and they were working on coalition building with young Jews in Germany and trying to find out ways in which things that they had in common. So these are things that work. These are things that we had been doing, and things that we need to frankly do. See my earlier point of right now, the conversation seems so binary. A lot of people are dug in, and things seem to be so intractable. We've got to get out of that kind of thinking where we know 4 or 5 things can be true at once, and people need to start talking to each other again and get back to what we started doing, and that's the coalition building. So they're working on an Islamophobia plan, but we're also against all forms of hate, as we should be, and want to continue to do that work in the new year.
That's great. Thanks.
I do want to say, too, because I think you can see so much of this hate is just interconnected. So much of it's interconnected. A terrible example is Buffalo. The Buffalo shooting that targeted a black supermarket was done by an anti-Semite who believed in this horrible replacement theory. So this stuff, it's all connected. That's why, one, it's the right thing to do, it's a moral thing to do, but to help eradicate anti-Semitism, we need to eradicate this other types of hate that are out there.
Yeah, totally agree.
So it's worth doing.
I want to change the mood and the topic of conversation a little bit. You have gotten to do a lot of very cool things. You led the U.S. delegation to the Women's Soccer World Cup, Bruce Springsteen played at the inauguration, and I wonder what you think is the coolest thing about being second gentleman.
Well, I already mentioned visiting my Jewish summer camp. But it's, again, like I'm a kid from Central Jersey who is now second gentleman of the United States. I mean, it's pretty cool. And there's times I'll look over to my wife, the vice president. I'll literally say, like, you're the vice president of the United States, and I'm married to you. And you're the second gentleman. So there's a level of this that is so surreal. And so many of these things that you do that you've seen on TV your whole life. Like just a week or so ago, I was at the Kennedy Center Honors, standing with the President of the United States. And I'm just like, I'm literally standing next to the President of the United States in his presidential box. And he's got his arm around me. He's like, hey, kid, how's it going? I'm like, and he knows me. This is so cool. And, you know, you're on Marine 2, Air Force 2. You're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So, and then when you mention people like Bruce Springsteen, who, again, as a kid, Jewish kid from New Jersey. Yes, he's not Jewish, but as the song goes, but my mother thinks he is. I mean, you're like, wow, Bruce Springsteen not only knows me, but he was pretty psyched to meet me. So you're always constantly like, how does Bono know who I am? It's like, oh yeah, I'm the second gentleman. So there's this constant sense of surrealness. But you know, just again, go back to my Reform rabbi, my Reform Jewish upbringing of just focusing on, you know, the right and wrong and being raised well and having great parents, great rabbi, that it doesn't faze me. You know, you just live in the moment and try to do your best. So that's what I try to do.
That's great. That's great. We so appreciate you being here today. I really cannot imagine a better way to kick off our 150th celebration. So I want to say thank you and ask if there's anything else that you would like to share with us.
We're done already? So much I wanted to get out.
Happy to ask you more.
Look, I've said this repeatedly, and I heard some of the comments earlier, that word joy. But look, these are tough. It's tough right now. I mean, this is tough right now for us. And it's so easy. The words that keep coming up from so many people, I feel alone and hated. And nobody wants to feel alone, and nobody certainly wants to feel hated. And so many of us, I've said this, we feel unmoored. We've never seen anything like this. Everything we thought was so is not right now. And like this, the sand, the soil beneath our feet is shifting. And it's hard. People we think we're friends aren't, and it's like you're thinking things, you're watching things rooting for people you never thought you'd root for. So there's all this stuff that's very difficult to deal with right now. And same for me. So this thing we're all experiencing as American Jews is something that we cannot let take our love of being Jewish away from us. We cannot let it take our joy away from us. And certainly, like, do not hide right now. This is a time to, you know, I've seen more high stars of David, like, bring them out, wear them, show the joy, show the pride, chest back, chin up, and just tell everyone how much you love being Jewish and tell everyone who we are. Because so much of what I've learned about anti-Semitism is rooted in lack of knowing who we are. Lack of knowing not only about the Holocaust, but the joy, but the things, the values, Rabbi, that we've talked about, this commitment to each other, this commitment to morality, ethics, justice, and all these things. So I just only hope, in closing, seeing some of the folks now who have spoken out against anti-Semitism so strongly, and I thank them for that, but let's see that same outrage when you say you see that woman in Texas who had to leave her state to get an abortion? Where's the outrage there? When you see children being murdered in schools, where's the outrage there? Right? Come on. Be for something. That's my message.
That's great. Can't be
Thank
better.
you.
Thank you so much for this time. It's just wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much.
Let's go. Thank you.
You go ahead.